Welcome to Casa Conversations. I'm excited because we have Chantel with us today, a former martial artist of sorts. She could tell you a little bit about her history and pedigree and that, and has transitioned into the world of firearms training, education, has a bit of a podcast and social media presence and other things, is involved in some social conversations, and I'm excited to dive into all of that. Now, question of the day: does a history or a background in martial arts help you to become more proficient or more excellent in the world of firearms? Let's go ahead and dive into that. My name is Aaron. Welcome to Casa Conversations. Hey, hey, welcome to the
What's
show.
up? Thank you.
Welcome
Thank you
to
for
the
having me.
show. So, just really quick, welcome to all of the live viewers, those who are watching us live, and of course, those who are listening on the podcast side after the fact. Thank you so much. I appreciate that you guys are even here. If you are a listener of the podcast, shoot me an email, info@costlymedia.com. I would love to hear from you, hear what you think about the show. Once again, thank you for everyone who enjoys what we do here. So, Chantel, did I say your name right, Chantel?
You did. Thank you.
Okay, because you know you got to be so careful with people's names. Like 2 3 episodes ago, I called my guest Alicia, and it's Alicia, and she let me know real quick. It's like, hey, no, it's Alicia. My parents named me Alicia.
Right.
But talk to me about what you do right now, because I know you're in the firearms space. What are you doing right now in the firearms game?
Yep. So right now I'm actually teaching concealed carry and basic pistol. For it's mainly focused for women, but men are also welcome. So we don't do like the drawing of the from the concealment stuff like that because most of my students have never touched a gun before in their life. So we start from very basic foundation.
Yeah. Okay, well that's good. That's fair. Now, as we had mentioned before, and if anyone has followed you for even a little bit, they know that you were in the martial arts for a long time. When did you start that, and where did you finish? Or are you even finished? Are you still competing and doing all sorts of stuff? Like, what are you doing with that?
Sure. So I actually started at the age of 8 years old and I retired about 3 years ago. I think it was 2020, like right after the pandemic hit. So with that, I did a lot of training, a lot of competitions. Didn't fight much. I fought for about, I want to say, the first couple years that I started competing around, I want to say about I started at 9, which is with gold belt, and then I really started competing competitively. I didn't start till like 30, 31. So I did it for about 27 years. I fought for 2 years of those, and we can get into why I stopped a little bit later. But I do hold 12 world championships, just for like forms or katas, just performance type of stuff.
Holy, you said 12 world. I mean, that seems like a lot. I mean, think about it. Lena Michalek, she's still pretty young, but she just won her ninth world championship for shooting, and this one was the last one was in Thailand for shotgun. Shout out to
Wow.
her and the whole U.S. Ladies team. I think we won like a whole lot, which is to be expected. To be expected. But you never want to take it for granted that you can go out there and perform and do really, really well. And then you said you won 12, um, um, is it medals or do you call it championships? Is that what I heard you say? Or is it, how did you,
They're world titles, yeah.
world titles?
Yep.
12, like goodness. Like after like that first one, do you think like, dang, can I even do it again? Do I still have it? Like, I don't like the psyche of a champion. Like what,
Right.
you got to take me through it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm not gonna lie, it took me 20 years to get my first world title because that was always my goal from when the time I was 9. It just never happened until I was 20, and the reason for that is because like life happens. You grow up, you have to be an adult, you have to support yourself, things of that sort. But after I hit my first world title, I was like, oh my gosh, I finally did it, right? I finally did it. And then so the divisions I was competing in, I had won my first world title, And then I was competing in about 4 or 5 different divisions, and you win some and you lose some. So I didn't place first place in all of those divisions when I went for all of my titles. However, I was like, okay, I got my first title. Now the next year I have to go and win those other divisions. So that's kind of like my psyche, or my mindset behind that. And still, I'm kind of like, I'm retired, but I'm like, there's still things I want to do. Like, I want to compete internationally. I want to sync something called sync team. I have a demo team. We can get into that as well, but I want something called sync team, and that is really hard to obtain, especially at my age. So I'm a little bit older when it comes to that stuff, but I still enjoy it. I do miss it quite a bit, but there was other reasons I retired.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I definitely appreciate you kind of sharing some of the, like what I say, the psyche of a champion. Like, what does it take? Like you said, you win some and you lose some. And I
Hmm.
think, um, I, let's go through the losses.
Sure.
Obviously, you said it took you until your 20s to, I guess, to start winning big. Were you competing when in your teens, or was, did you win your first time out? Like, how did that go? And then take me through like the losing of it all, which, obviously it sucks, but like let's walk through that.
Sure, absolutely. So as you get older, and we can dive like really deep into it. But as you get older, there's less and less people in your divisions. The circuit that I was competing in was an open circuit called NASCA, NASKA, and it's all over YouTube. And if you go and check out even the kids who are competing now, they're amazing. It's insane. So I grew up on the brink of like a gymnastics, something called extreme martial arts. I never really got into the gymnastics part. I was just more of a creative martial artist. I tried it, and I was like, that is way too complicated for me. I was older at the time, so it was harder to learn the gymnastics. But the very first title I won was something called extreme weapons. Now, being older, we didn't have to be very extreme because we're older, right? So I want to say it was a little bit easier, but I do still have a passion for it. However, when I lost the creative divisions, which is one of the hardest divisions to get because you have to be like creative and they take all that into account. It's really hard to be creative when you're competing against like 10, 12, 14, 17 different people, but you train for years and years and years on end for 2 minutes of your life because the maximum time frames that you have is 2 minutes. And I'm actually on YouTube if anybody wants to look it up. Just Google my name, Chantel Tafoy, and there's a couple of videos on there that were my best in my career. But if you're comparing me to other martial artists, definitely not the best.
Wow. I mean, but that is so cool. Like when you say like the extreme and the creative, are we
Mhm.
talking like we're taking like two swords and flipping around and doing windmill? Like what are we doing with that?
That's exactly what it is. So anything extreme is considered like gymnastics. It's basically, they call it martial arts tricking, but it's the same as gymnastics, basically, is what it is. So you take gymnastics and you mix it into your martial arts kata or performance or form, whatever, depending on different styles. So you mix that in with the elements of like punching and kicking and yelling and screaming and all of that stuff. It's really cool to watch and it's really amazing. I'm like, man, I wish I could have done that, but at the same time, I know a lot of people who've gotten injured. I know a lot of people who ended up in the hospital. I know a lot of people who've gotten like severe breaks and stuff like that. But that's exactly what it is. Extreme martial arts has to do with the gymnastics. When we're talking about the creative side, we're pretty much just like throwing a weapon, and if it's clean catch, like if it's beautiful, stuff like that, or if it doesn't look sloppy, the speed, the technique. Yeah, I could show you a couple of videos of like the differences.
Yeah, I definitely. You have to send me some after the fact, and I'll try to throw them in
Yeah,
the description of this video, so people who really want to kind of go back and look at your exploits, they can kind of take a look and see,
sure.
see how awesome you really were. No, but that's really cool. And so talking about saying like, okay, so you're there, you're competing against kids, competing against I guess he said like 15-year-olds and other people who I imagine the healing factor of kids is a little bit more how do you say if you get a little stinger, you sprain your ankle at
Hmm.
15, you're good like 2 days later usually,
Right.
unless you like really sprain it. When you're getting into your 20s, pushing 25, and I don't know how old you are, but I know when for me, like even at 27, if I tweak something, I tweaked it for like a month, maybe
Right.
two, maybe three. And so I can imagine like you got to be a little bit more careful with that. Like you're not probably not as light on your feet as some of these people, just
Right.
because just the nature of getting older. But like not winning, like you push it and you
Mhm.
push it and you push it. Like, how do you go home and are you okay after that, or does it take a few days, or you just say, hey, you know what, this one wasn't for me. I'm gonna get the next one. Like, what do you tell yourself?
So going a little bit back into context for that, we're taught
Yeah.
sportsmanship from a very young age, right? Like you have to have good sportsmanship. Don't throw your weapons. Don't throw your equipment. Don't have attitude. Don't, and that's something that's instilled from us to us for a very young point of view. So as an adult, when I won my first championships onward, I was pretty good sport. Not gonna lie, I was mad. I was mad because I'm like watching these people and compared to myself, and I'm like, okay, what were the judges looking for? Because typically what happens is you have a panel from anywhere from 3 to 5 judges, and supposedly one judge is like the center judge, right? So they sit in the middle, and they kind of just judge your performance overall. Like, were you synced with your music if you're using music? Were you powerful? Were you yelling? Are your cuts clean? Depending on what type of weapon you're using, are your strikes clean? Stuff like that. It's just different things. And then the side judges kind of like watch your feet in your hands. Like, is your arm bent? Is your toe out of place? Is your stance is correct? Stuff like that. So when I would lose, which is more so the creative divisions for whatever reason, I would watch these, my competitors, and I'm like, man, that's awesome for you, and I'm really happy that they took home that title. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, what can I do better? I'm gonna go home and then I'm gonna work on this so that next time when I do point chase throughout the year, I can get to that first seed spot, and then at Worlds or Globals, then I can try to win that division yet again. Problem is that we never know who's going to be in those rings because we move up a division depending on age and rank and stuff like that for the next year.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's fair. Now, the big question that I have is in regards to actual fighting in combat. I know you said you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do a whole lot of fighting, but you've done some.
Mm-hmm.
Even just being in a karate class or whatever it is that you're doing. And I don't know how much of your time was spent in like a traditional karate class, kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
back in the 90s or when I was growing up. You got in lines and the higher belts would run you through some drills and run you through some kata. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, I guess now I learned a new one. Okay, yeah, we're going to go ahead and spar for the last 30 minutes of class or whatever. And like, how much of your life was spent doing that? And I guess how much of your life did you, I guess, spend doing um, the competition stuff?
Yeah, so I've trained since I was 8. I retired at about, let me see, how old am I? I think I retired, I want to say 36, 37. So very recently. But I spend most of it training. And then pre-pandemic, I traveled competitively for about 6 years consistently. So it was about the last 6 years pre-pandemic that I really spent like traveling, training, competing, point chasing, trying to obtain those world titles, meeting people, networking, training some more, stuff like that.
Did you ever own your own gym, or was this just,
No,
or okay, so this is just,
no,
hey, I'm participating, or I'm doing the competitions and preparing for those.
correct.
Okay, cool. Because I remember I was doing Krav Maga, and it's not just Krav. They also had Kali, and they had a few other things, packaged into that um, lab or dojo or
Hmm.
gym or whatever you want to call it. It almost sounds like Pokemon, like going to each gyms and
Yep.
taking over. Um, and with that, it's like, man, like the financial side of running a dojo or a gym, it must be crazy because I remember I kept getting calls and emails like, "Hey, do you want to sign up for some private lessons?" Or do you want? I was like, "Man, like, are these people struggling or like what's the deal?" And I
It's the
imagine if you unless you're charging everybody like $1,000 a month to show up, like it could get kind of expensive, especially if you have employees. Like,
right.
so I feel for people who it's their dream to teach, and maybe they're not. It's not the most financially sustainable thing, or maybe they'd like to move up a tax bracket, and it's like hard to do so because it's like how many kids could you get in here?
Right.
Did you ever have a desire to teach? I guess that's my next question.
I did. I did. Once upon a time, a long time ago in a faraway land, I wanted to own several schools. But as I got older, that changed. And
Yeah,
the reason why let's see, I was 9 years old. I went to my first national tournament. I trained under Mile High Karate. They're no longer around, but everybody who has trained under Mile High Karate now has their own schools, which is crazy. But I remember it's called the Mile High Karate Classics, like 1998, and you can look this person up as well. Her name was Casey Nash, now last name Nash. Casey Marks Casey Nash. phenomenal with the bow staff. I don't care what anybody says. Like, you know, as we get older, the sport evolves and stuff like that. But she's also on YouTube. That was the performance. I sat right in the middle and like in the audience, and I watched this lady, sponsored by Paul Mitchell. Yes, Paul Mitchell, like
Wow.
Paul Mitchell Systems. And that was my goal. That still is today my goal. But that was what inspired me to compete in the first place. She was the one that inspired me, and which is why I hold 12 now, you know, world titles today.
Yeah.
So that, like, I will never ever ever forget that memory. I will never forget that performance, because that is exactly what put me where I am at today.
You know, it's really interesting, and you know, transitioning to the next question in just a second, but I was just watching a football game, Seahawks versus, oh my gosh, who are they playing? I can't even remember. But the quarterback who was playing in that game, he wasn't really supposed to be playing, but the other guy was injured, and they kind of put him in last minute. And at the end of the game, they had kind of had the really clutch play at the end, and they won. And it was crazy because really they're not really supposed to win. You're playing with a backup quarterback. It's not really, you're not put in a position to succeed unless you can dig it out of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, "Man, even the play call at the very end, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life." I'm like, "The play call at the end, just the call coming in over the headset, you're going to remember that for the rest of your life?" I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I can't remember conversations I had 10 minutes ago. Like,
Right.
what were we talking about? Like, I can't even remember. But the idea that like a moment in athletics or sports, like you were just mentioning, like just watching her performance, that you're going to take that with you for the rest of your life. I mean, you remember it right now, like
Mm-hmm.
that's got to be something, huh?
It is. It really is. And it's funny because every time I like there, and you know, I did it for so long that I was like, I had moments where I'm like, I just want to give up. I just want to quit because it's so hard. It's so hard. You always have to put your time in wherever you go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's very expensive nonetheless. Like traveling and competing and the hotel rooms and the airline stuff like that. Unless you're sponsored, I mean, you're paying that out of pocket. But I will never ever forget it. I won't till this day. Like I'm still looking for sponsors to sponsor me, but you know, and that's because I'm retired, because like it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Not because I didn't work hard, but because there was things in the background that I was like, okay, I would present this to my coach or present certain things to different people that were supposed to happen that never did, and that's part of why I retired, to be honest with you. But I never wanted to retire. It's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, now I'm just spending endless money to pay for awards because I want, you know, I want the team titles. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to wear this brand on
Mm-hmm.
my back. I was like, I'll promise you, I will represent 1000% if you sponsor me. But it is really, 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 really hard because you have to build and you have to travel for, I think I heard somebody say 1 year, like 2 years, you have to put your time in. But even at that, you have to have 90 titles, which is physically impossible at my age. But if you're young and you're 8 years old and you're winning and you're doing it, that's probably possible for you. But it's still one of those things where I'm like, I never wanted to retire. I'm like, I go back these days and I still miss it. But at the same time, I don't miss the politics. I don't miss the favoritism. I don't
Mm-hmm.
miss like, you know, somebody does the better trick than I do or whatever. And I'm just like, I just don't miss that part of it.
Yeah, like that's got to be like frustrating because anywhere you go, you could be working in a freaking call center. There's going to be some
Hmm.
politics. There's going to be some favoritism. There's going to be that one, you know, hippie looking dude who has got long hair down to his butt and wears flip flops with toenails exposed, you know, the whole
Yep.
day. He's like, he's got holes in his t-shirt. And how did he make supervisor before me? Like, look at
Right.
him, look at me, look at him, look at me. And you want to be
Hmm.
happy for the dude because, you know, that's your buddy. You know, like y'all talk about, what did he talk about? This is a real guy, real guy. I'm talking about somebody who really existed. He would talk about My Little Pony all the time. He wore a My Little Pony hat. Like he could take you through like the entire saga. And not gonna lie, My Little Pony kind of goes hard. Like it, it kind of does.
I hear that
But
quite a bit.
right, I mean, I don't watch it, you know, not anymore, anyways. But, um, but it's like, dang, like how did he make it? What's is it because he showed some sort of initiative? Is it because he's
Right.
white? Like, what's the holdup? And like you were saying, like when you're in a thing and you're committed and you're really passionate about it, it really hurts to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself like, hey, why am I not achieving certain goals or like you said, getting certain sponsorships or because like golly, imagine how much money it costs to do it. I don't even know. Can you give us some figures? But like imagine how much you put into it and then somebody else gets the call and it's like I know I worked harder. Like I know I did.
Yeah, so the circuit that I was talking about earlier, NASKA or NASCA, that
Hmm.
was probably, I want to say, depending on what tournament it is, because some tournaments were major and more popular than others. I want to say anywhere from 3 to 5,000, depending on
Just to
what
get
you were
in,
doing.
or my
So
God.
so the divisions, yeah, it's expensive. So like per division, you're paying $100 per division, and
Okay.
then you're paying for flights, and then you're paying for hotel, then you're paying for your food, and then like training camps if you're gonna go travel train, right before a competition. The other circuit that I actually obtained my titles in is called, well, they're no longer, well, they are around, but they're separated now. But the American Taekwondo Association,
Hmm.
sorry, American Taekwondo Association (ATA). That's really, really, really popular around the world. So those are what I have my titles in, and it was a little bit cheaper because I got smart about it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pay $1,200 per airline, but I'm also splitting a room with 6 different competitors, which were my teammates and my friends, which really helped. So at that point, I was only spending about maybe $700 to $1,000 per tournament, just depending on what it was. And then we started strategizing, like, do I really need these points? Are these points going to make a difference? If I mess up one tournament and don't place, do I really need the next tournament? So it becomes a strategy after that.
Wow. I mean, but like you said, if you're doing it on your own dime, that could get hard. And what was your day job during that time? Like, what did you do for money?
I was working at Barclays in a call center, so fraud specialist at the time.
Okay, so just like me, working in a call center,
Yep.
struggling, wondering, is this my life
Yep.
5 years in? Is this
Right.
what I want to do?
Right.
And then trying to get the time off PTO. Okay,
Yep.
are my off days going to sync up with the travel days? And golly, that's got to suck.
Hard.
I
Yeah.
mean, not to poo poo anyone's career, because hey, if you're killing it and you're happy,
Mhm.
or you're confident, or you feel good about what you're doing, great. But I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I thought I did. Like when I look back, I'm like, man, you know what? I let a lot of people lie to me, and a lot of people, I guess, deceive me about what I should be doing next.
Right.
Part of that's, you just make a decision, right? But anyways, so a couple months ago at this point, I had a conversation with a gentleman out of Florida. He spent his life doing martial arts, and he transitioned into firearms eventually. You Similarly, you did competition, you did
Mhm.
all sorts of stuff, and you transitioned into firearms. What do you feel like you were able to take from the world of I guess, martial arts that actually applies? Do you feel like you're more, I guess, with the fighting and the coordination and all the different things that you have to remember? Do you feel like you're more, I guess, competent in the work if you were to get into a scuffle? Like, do you feel like you'd
Mhm.
be okay, or is it like, hey,
Oh, yeah.
you win some, you lose some? Do they know jujitsu? Like, you know?
That's fair to say. I definitely do. My sister and I bring her up in this situations, the gun situations all the time because
Hmm.
she's one of those people who are like, I don't want to touch a gun. Okay, great. But
I hate
if
that.
I'm not around, what are you gonna do? Right. But she's always handing like the kids off to me if she's uncomfortable in a situation because she knows I can protect them better than anybody. So now going back into the martial arts a little bit, I was never like military hand-to-hand combat. It was more like sparring, like put your headgear on, your handgear on, and
Let's get some
spar and kind of
points.
like just
Yeah.
fight. Yeah, just kind of like,
Yeah.
I want to say street fighting, but it's a little bit, point sparring. There you go, point sparring.
Hmm.
So transitioning from martial arts into the gun space. Yeah, but it's a mindset, it's a big mindset. Like you're gonna survive regardless. If you don't have that mindset, you may not make it depending on the
Yeah.
situation. I feel like I'd be okay. I know that every time a spark is lit in me, then I'm just like, I know I'm gonna be okay, and I know I can take them. I don't care how big you are. I don't care. It's if you want to survive, that's what's going to happen, and you're
Do
going
you
to have
feel
that
as
hope to
that
survive.
competition background has kind of given you the ability to like know who you are on the inside enough that if the person could be 6'7", built like a house, you
Hmm.
got this? Like, do you feel like that did it, or was it something else that kind of gives you that confidence?
No, I think was 100% my martial arts. But that was also 30 years ago, or 20 years ago. So it was taught very differently back then than it is today, for sure.
Okay, fair. So obviously there's the world of, karate, taekwondo, and things like that. And now they've introduced, well, I guess they introduced it a little while back, but it's become so much more popular with the UFC, mixed martial arts.
Hmm.
Do you have any mixed martial arts background, or is that something that you wish you could have did, or is like, no, I've seen people lose their teeth, I'm not interested in getting down and dirty like that?
I don't. But I did have a coach at one point in time where I'm like, I need to get you in the octagon. I was like 22, 23, and he was like, you're
Hmm.
gonna be my best. Like I think it was like middleweight, like weight or middleweight. I can't remember. But he was adamant about getting me in the octagon. I was like, you are out of your mind. I was like, I would rather struggle working a normal corporate job than to get like brain damage or like,
Right.
something that's like permanent, because those are permanent injuries. You can't, no matter how much money it is, like you couldn't pay me enough to get in the octagon. Now I enjoy watching it because I'm like, dang, like he got messed up or whatever. But I just, for me, it wouldn't work for me, you
Right.
know.
Right. No, I mean, coming from somebody who your competition really wasn't fighting based. However,
Mm-mm.
you did compete. Ronda Rousey, she was
Mm-hmm.
taking the world by storm. Like she was the it girl in the world of fighting for a minute. Does that word even make sense? Like she
Mm-hmm.
was a machine,
He was,
and
yeah,
then she got beat one time, and it was so it was demoralizing to watch. Like you
right.
just saw her get punched in the face once, twice, three times. Like it was just like, dang, like is she gonna be able to fight back? And people said, well, she really wasn't great at this or that. Her striking wasn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
But coming from somebody who you go in and you get disappointed, how do you dig deep within yourself and come back, and where do you feel like, just from the outside looking in, where do you feel like she maybe dropped the ball when it comes to the heart of the champion and really being able to come back and compete in a way to win the next time?
It's a great question. I don't know much about Ronda Rousey. I do know she was killing it in her time.
Hmm.
And I do know she was one of the greatest in my book. But I also feel, personal opinions don't come from me, but personal opinion, I think it was the ego, because like the cockiness, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that get like really cocky and then they get beat. Conor McGregor is one of my favorite fighters. I love Conor McGregor, but again, cockiness, right? And I'm just like, he's so cocky, but like at times he deserves it, and at times I'm just like, you know. And
Yeah.
it's not to say, I mean, it really comes from within. It really does. And I try, like, I'm not a cocky person at all. As you know, I always talk stuff, like I talk and give myself jokes and stuff like that. But like, if I'm gonna go win something, I'm gonna do my best. And if I walk away disappointed, then we're gonna try again the next time. Like, I'm not gonna stop. And that's where that martial arts like mindset and skill come from. I'm like, I'm determined to do something. I'm gonna do it. Period. I'm not gonna get cocky about it. I'm not gonna get egotistical about it. I'm not gonna get an attitude. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna train hard, and I'm gonna come back even harder.
Okay. So you got that dog in you, which is necessary for any sort of competition sport or winning at life. Do you feel like you were born with that, or you were raised into it? I mean, obviously you started when you were 8, and so you developed some of that perhaps as you were growing up. Or do you feel like, no, I was a different person, and then martial arts really pushed me to unlock that dog?
I honestly think it was a little bit of both. My godfather helped raise me, and he was one of the most independent, stubborn, hard-headed people I know, which I'm a lot alike. But I think partial is my upbringing, and partial of it is martial arts. Like it's pretty much like if I want to do something, no matter what it is, I'm gonna go learn and do it. Just like the gun space. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm still new to the gun space, and I'm like I've always wanted to own a gun, but it's definitely nerve wracking when you first do it, but it's just like anything else, just like riding a bike, just like competing. You have to learn how to do it, and then once you know how to do it, you're good, right?
Yeah.
But you always have to like keep those rules and that background in mind, like the safety rules and stuff like that. So it's kind of like just if I want to learn something, I'm gonna go do it. If I don't want to learn something, from being too lazy, I'm like that's just too much work. I don't want to do it, or I don't have time, or you have to prioritize. But I think part of it was my upbringing.
All right, yeah. Well, we're going to take this quick message or quick moment to plug some of the stuff that we do here. And for those who are interested, thank you guys for watching or listening wherever you are. If you haven't already, there's links pretty much everywhere in the description of this video, in the podcast show notes, where you can join us over on our community page or our community site called Locals, armedatlas.com, or excuse me, armedatlas.locals.com. The links are everywhere. You don't have to even type it in. Just click the link and head over. And you're able to have early access to both the firearms content that we make under Armed Atlas and additional content, extra content, early content for the podcast side. So if you're interested in joining the podcast or having input or different things like that, make sure that you are supporting us over on the Locals Community channel. You don't have to pay anything to enjoy most of the content. Even if something is gated off, I'll go ahead and make it free to those who are following me over there eventually. So, but we definitely want to make sure that we can fund what we do here. So take 5 minutes, go over there. First month is usually free. If you want to go ahead and type the promo code free in at checkout, you can get the first month for free, see if it's worth it, and then join up. $5 a month gets you access to both gun content and the podcast, which normally we talk about guns. So that's that. And speaking about talking about guns, let's talk about Chantel's career in the firearms instructing, training, where you are as a shooter. So first question, when did you start your firearms, I guess, journey? When did you start teaching, and why did you start teaching? Because everybody's why is so different. Well, hold on. All right, go again.
Sorry. So I started in 2021, so just a few years ago, which is why I still consider myself a new shooter, but others will say like, oh, you're not new, you're not brand new. I'm like, but I still feel brand new because I'm still learning. So I started teaching in 2023 officially licensed, business license, stuff like that in 2023. So very beginning of this year. I started teaching because I felt like there was no women instructors in my area at the time that I went, which was the height of the pandemic, but everything was shut down. So I searched the city up and down for gun ranges, going back and forth to different stores, going back and forth talking to different instructors, and I ended up going with an instructor that I felt most comfortable with. Now, even though I wasn't like 100%, I'm like, oh my God, I can relate to this guy. Like, he's going to take all the time to teach me. I still went there. It was a great class. He was a great instructor, but I felt like as I went and completed that class, and then the stuff that I learned afterward, I was like, oh, I don't remember learning that. I don't remember learning that. I'm like, why didn't they teach me this? Why didn't they teach me that? Because I remember going into a gun store for the very first time and learning from absolute zero. Didn't know how to load a gun, didn't know how to unload a gun, didn't know how to drop the magazine, didn't know what racking meant, didn't know there was weight of bullets, stuff like that. And I'm like, I really feel like this is important. Like, this is important foundation to know. Nobody took the time to go through that with me. So I decided to teach, to take the time to go through that because it's very important, because we're literally, quote unquote, playing with life or death.
Mm-hmm. Man, I appreciate that you explained that. Do you feel? I suppose the question is, why did you did you have a moment that was like, hey, you know what, martial arts is cool, but I do think a firearm is the next best tool. I'm seeing these things, and I can't sleep on this, because you didn't get a gun straight out of college.
Mm-mm.
Let's talk about
Nope.
that.
Sure. I started literally 2 years ago, picked up my first gun and started shooting.
Why?
So the transition from that is actually something through the height of the pandemic. So when we stopped traveling because of the pandemic, we stopped traveling, stopped training, we couldn't do anything. I was like, what better time is it than to go learn gun safety? So I did that. And then let me go back just a little bit. So prior to that, I live in Las Vegas. So anybody who knows Las Vegas area, it can be dangerous depending, where you're at, what area you're in, and it gets really scary. So there is a story that I've told in some of my shows as well, and sometimes online, just like brief snippets of it, where there's an escalator in between. I think it's the Palazzo and the Venetian. There's an up escalator and there's a down escalator. And the thing that made me get my gun is this story right here. I saw a crowd in like the pedestrian bridge, and where we're like, oh yeah, I was like, oh, what's going on over there? Street performers. I was like, let's go see. Well, I saw two guys running toward me, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're just like part of the performance, but they were literally running towards myself and my family. I pushed my now ex-wife. I pushed my ex-wife out of the way. I pushed my sister out of the way and the kids over to an elevator that was nearby, and I was like, I will handle this. And so they ended up splitting. There's two guys. One went up the up escalator in the casino. One went down escalator in the casino. And so I get in the elevator with them, And it was like a 2.5-second ride, super short. And then next thing we know, we see a law enforcement officer waving us out. And I was like, oh God, what actually happened? So as soon as I safely get them across the street away from everything, I was like, oh shit, oops, sorry. Oh shit. I was like, people actually got arrested. We had just witnessed a robbery right in front of us. I was like, that was way too close for me. There is no way I can let that happen again, because it's me. I'm the protector of the family. I'm the head of the household. Like, I can't let that happen. My sister's not going to do it. My ex-wife was in no position to do it. So I was like, who's going to do it? I guess I'm going to have to, which is cool. So that's what made me go and get my gun.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because specifically with ladies, there's always a canon event, right? Where,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, guys, I know for myself, I had an event that actually happened to me that pushed me into it. But for some reason with guys, it's always like, hey, I've always wanted to do it, and I finally did it. Or I've been watching a lot of Colion Noir, or name a gun tuber who encourages Second Amendment stuff. And it's like, hey, I want to get a gun. Okay, now you go down the rabbit hole. Just as a teenage guy, I had teachers concerned about me in junior high and high school because I doodle guns. It's like, you know what? Truthfully, I think they thought I was going to become something like terrible, but I'm a decent guy. I just thought they were fascinating, and even still, even though I was interested in firearms and I had a creative mind and I was like, wanted to kind of create something cool. We you know, it took something happening that didn't
Mm-hmm.
end up being violent, but had the extreme potential for violence, kind of like what you ran into, where it's like, man, like, hey, you guys get over here, and you have the frame of mind to try to start making moves, and thankfully it didn't turn deadly. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
DJ Play Nice, our moderator, said huge wake up call. Glad it didn't involve violence. Talking to you, yeah, I'm extremely glad it didn't involve violence. But here's the thing: like, something had to happen to wake you up to say, like,
Right.
hey, you know what? Bad guys have these tools. What's the most effective way to stop a fight immediately? A fight that I don't want to be in. It's a firearm. There's a lot of stuff out there, but it's a firearm.
Right.
And so now you're in a position where you've learned some things, and you want to share and be a part of the knowledge transfer experience, the sharing of information. Um, I guess what really made you do it? Because I know you've been doing the show or the podcast for a while. If you want to kind of explain that, but like, did you say like, now I have to start teaching, or like, what was that? I guess evolution or escalation like?
That's a great question. And the reason why is because, like, when I first picked up my very first gun, before I went and took my concealed carry course, I was like, do I want to teach? Do I want to just kind of carry a gun? Like, what do I want to do? And when I began the podcast, I was like, I was still in limbo of that. I was like, I don't know if I want to, like, actually go teach and, like, consume the liability, or take responsibility for the liability, because we're literally like signing off on guns for people who, like, I don't know if they're going to go commit murder. I don't know if they're going to ever have to use it. I don't know if they're going to, what kind of red flags are going to show, stuff like that. And it does get really scary. But I started the podcast because I was at that limbo. I wasn't sure if I wanted to teach, but I was like, what better way to start a podcast? Because the information I had learned, I felt like I should put out there, because I felt like other women or other people didn't know these things. And I felt like it was a good thing for me to be like, hey, let's have Aaron on. Hey, let's have Kevin on. Hey, let's have, whoever's teaching this and has been doing this for a lot longer than I have, because everybody has different points of view. Everybody has different stories. Everybody has different teaching styles. There's a lot more people that are way more knowledgeable than me in the gun space. And I appreciate that. And I think all that information should be out there for others to learn for.
Hmm. I love that, and I can definitely appreciate wanting to, I guess, take people with knowledge and information and put them in a position to speak to a little bit wider audience. First of all, what is the name of your show for those who are listening, and for myself, remind me?
It's Pull the Trigger Vidcast, a little bit different from podcast.
Right, Pull the Trigger Vidcast. And why do you call it a vidcast? What's the difference to you?
Just trying to be different, because everybody has a podcast, right? And I was
Right.
like, well, we're implementing like the video, because it's not just like audio.
Hmm.
I get personally really bored with audio, and I'm like, oh, I like to see people's reactions, like in their facial expressions, what are they wearing, stuff like that.
Hmm.
So since it's like more directed towards videos, I decided to make it a vidcast.
Vidcast. I think there's these two guys on the internets, and I guess they have like a retail space, and there's the tall guy with the flip flops and the curly hair, and he's like twirling his gun around and doing all sorts of like crazy things. Like, don't do that, kids.
Right.
I just realized that they have something called, they call it a procast, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, guys, we're taking this thing too far. First, everything was tactical, and
Evolution.
now we're doing procast because podcast isn't good enough. Vidcast
Right.
makes sense. Someone told me, like, hey, we'd love to be part of your vodcast, which vodcast, vidcast makes sense. Procast, listen, those guys are doing great. No animosity, but what the heck? Like, why are we like this? What are we doing?
Trying to evolutionize it, trying to be different, right? You gotta
Trying to
be
be
different.
different. No, it's you're right. I love this comment that just came in. Firearms carry your defensive responsibilities or responsibilities. Excuse me. Firearms carry your defensive responsibilities outside the range of hands and feet. Gun solves that limitation. So yeah, I mean, you can be really nice with your hands and feet. You can literally be Conor McGregor, but unless you can,
Mhm.
what did he throw at somebody? Was it a bike rack he tossed at a bus or somebody did?
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, that was a while back, like before this big fight. Some, I guess his boys versus, I guess somebody else, one of his competitors. They were in a travel bus, and they threw like a bike rack at it, and somebody got hurt. And
Oh
you
man.
know that man's rowdy. That man's super rowdy. I'm surprised he's not ended up in jail. But
Right. I agree.
you got enough money, maybe you can stay out. But so talking about the vidcast a little bit, what what have you found so far? Just I'm always interested in like sharing notes and kind of
Mhm.
exploring, I guess, the pros, cons, and limitations of what we do with these things. But what have you discovered in creating this kind of content where you're having conversations with new people, even getting people on the show? Like, what have you discovered? What's been interesting? What's been novel?
Interesting. That's a great question. I've found that I have personally learned a lot more, and I feel like I'm personally have gained a lot more by having all the kinds of guests on the show. The other interesting part is that it opens you up to the internet, right? So whether it be positive, negative, stuff like that, and then you just have to take the good with the bad, because what you say lives on the internet forever, literally. So be mindful of that if you're going to start a podcast or whatever you want to start on the internet. But I have learned that there's a lot more people in here that are a lot more supportive, which I'm grateful for, because it's very different change for me personally, versus the martial arts space.
You know what? I recognize that too. And just going back to some of your posts that I've seen just on the Instagram side, which is not necessarily the vidcast. I guess it's like your ideas, your musings, things that you found on the
Mhm.
internet that you want to share. At least that's what I've seen a lot. And I think you've had some clips on there as well. But it's so interesting, like sharing your opinion will create one of two things. You'll either the algorithm will send it to your people that you want
Mhm.
to have the conversation with and just kind of, you know, help you live in that happy echo chamber, or the algorithm will send it to people who hate you,
Right.
and, and the conversation gets real nasty. By
Yeah.
the way, Merry Christmas to everyone who is enjoying this time of year. Thank you guys for being with us on this Sunday afternoon. If you're with us live, or even if you're watching after the fact, Merry Christmas to you and your family. I hope that you guys are having a restful holiday. Even if you don't celebrate, please enjoy your time with your family. That's all I want for you. Um, Back to what you were saying, Chantel. I actually, and this is one of the most interesting things. You had mentioned earlier that you were married to a woman at one point, and being a member of the LGBTQ community kind of opens you up to, I guess, some criticism. Am I right?
Sort of. Personally, no, but as a whole, yes.
Personally, no.
Hmm.
So I'm glad to hear personally no, because I would hate to feel like, man, you just simply existing is inviting, because there's this. I don't even know where you are politically, but when you're having conversations with certain people who would identify as more liberal, or even the younger
Hmm.
demographic, I think the younger demographic has an issue with being a little too sensitive. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
A
Just,
little
I mean,
bit.
just a little bit, just like an ounce or two, right? Um, and everything is a microaggression. Everything is a slight. Somebody looks at you funny. It's like, well, maybe it's not because, uh, you're gay or whatever. Maybe it's because you're a jerk. Stop being a jerk. And
Fair.
it could be anything. It could be anything, because there are people out there who are wild and out of control and don't know how to be loving and kind and accepting of people, even if maybe you don't agree with what they do, or you have maybe a religious um, code that kind of is counter to the way that they live, like all those things, right?
Hmm.
But I know, like, getting back to what I was referring to with you, you've had some conversations. Um, I don't know if it's specifically on the vidcast, but through some of your social media channels where you're questioning things, you're asking questions, you're sharing some things, and you've gotten some pushback. Some things, some people agree with you. It's like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
that's not good, and you're like, yeah. What are some of the things that people have agreed with you on when it comes to some of these conversations that you've had, specifically to do with LGBT um, conversations, and what are some things that people have really got upset with you about? What can you share?
Ah, I knew this was gonna come up. I'm glad you asked. Thank you. Um, so there's a lot. Um, a lot of my friends, colleagues, peers, mentors agree on my stance personally on like the transitioning, like trans kids. And the reason I say that is like now to be very, very clear, I don't have a problem with trans people. Never did, never will. Okay. I have a problem with kids transitioning when they can't even drink alcohol or they can't even smoke a cigarette or they can't drive. Like if you're 6 years old and transitioning, or if your parents give that that consent, what the hell's wrong with you? I just don't believe in that. Like I was raised very old school. I'm part of the older generation. So I firmly believe that if you're 18 years old and you're able to make that decision and knowing like the consequences and the pros and stuff like that, if that's something you're really wanting to do, if you're 18, you can do that. Under 18, I don't believe it should happen. And a lot of people hate me for it, and a lot of people agree with me on it. Being a part of the LGBTQ community, it really puts us in a box. Just because I look the way I do, not feminine presenting, do have feminine features, but not feminine presenting. Got short hair, I dress like a dude. I don't care. I'm comfortable. But when somebody sees me on the street, I can't wait for the day, which hasn't happened yet, thank God, and God forbid it does. But when somebody sees me on the street and they just say, like, oh, you're part of XYZ, and then they want to throw problems at me, then we have a problem. And that's my problem with that. I'm like, man, I can't even walk down the street without somebody saying, you're whatever. I'm not going to say it on here, but whatever. But also people hate me for it. And I've gotten lots and lots of pushback, especially on some Instagram videos where they're calling me, I don't even know what it's called, but they're saying like turf, like what is it? Trans exclusive something. I don't even know. I've never heard of that term before.
Was it
And
a
I was,
turf?
yeah,
Yeah,
TERF. I
trans
don't even know what it stands
exclusionary
for.
feminist or something like that. Basically
Yeah.
saying like, hey, you're cool with people being feminine, or you're a feminist only for women, and you don't like the trans, or whatever that people say. And people were saying that about Dave Chappelle, who is
Hmm.
controversial. He's
Yeah.
hilarious. I love Dave,
I
but
love Dave Chappelle too. I think he's funny.
yeah.
I love Matt Rife too, and people hate him now too.
Oh, we should talk about the Matt Rife thing as
Oh,
soon
I
as we're done
love
with
me some
this.
Matt Rife.
Yeah, when we're done with this, we can talk about the Matt Rife
Okay.
thing. But so you've pushed back and you've said like, hey, I don't think this is good. I think one of the videos, did you post like a drag queen story hour video?
Hmm.
And I'm assuming the commentary from your side was like, hey, I don't agree with this. But
Hmm.
you've also posted some other videos where you're discussing, I guess, some of the, I forget, man, I wish I could remember. I wish I'd done a little bit more research. But you posted other videos calling people out
Hmm.
for, I guess, some of the hypocrisy that we have and from the I guess the straight community. Is that a thing? Are we a community, or is this? I don't think so. But hey,
No, I wouldn't say like straight community. And the reason I say that is because like I know LGBT has like their own community, right?
hmm
But I'm kind of in the middle because I'm not a part, like I don't consider myself part of like the LGBTQ community. Like I have friends and mentors of all walks of life.
hmm.
So that's one thing. And then the
So you're
trans
you're not
community,
segregating yourself off.
no, God, no, no, that's stupid. Like, I don't believe in all that. It's just dumb because I'm like, there's people out there that who consider themselves part of the LGBT community or the space, right? Will be like, oh, I can only support LGBTQ, or if you're straight, I don't want to deal with you. Like, it's stupid. Like, I have friends, mentors, again, of all walks of life. I'm like, most of the people I deal with are straight. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
people I deal with on like another side are not straight, and that's okay. Like, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to like, I'm trying to grow. You know what I mean? I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to build. I'm trying to learn everything, and I just don't feel like, oh, um if I go and be like, oh, I'm only going to deal with this person because, oh, they're a lesbian, or if I'm going to deal with this person, oh, because solely because they're trans, like, I feel like that's putting limitations on myself, and that's a
Yeah.
problem for me.
Yeah. And I hate to make it even like some sort of comparison of whataboutism, but I've noticed that specifically when it comes to, I guess any group can run into this issue where it's like you have an Asian guy or you have a black guy, and it's like people look at you. There's some indicators that you can outwardly display that you're lesbian or whatever, but as just a black dude walking across the street, if I were to do something wild and out of control and my video gets posted to Instagram, guess what? I'm gonna get the tag the usual suspects or something, just
Right.
something to boil my blood a little bit, or the basketball people at it again, like all the slurs and slangs and sayings, and it's frustrating because it's like, is there anything positive that people can say? Or are they just kind of living in their troll moment? You know, I don't even know what I was getting at with that. I was just so frustrated. I get so frustrated at the idea that we're boxing ourselves in. That
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you've run into this in your own life or in conversations or even just in your mind where you're like, I would have this person on my show, but they've said some things that I don't necessarily agree with, or um, specifically when I run into my more liberal friends or fans who are more liberal, sometimes we run into this stuff where it's like, oh, I hate that you had on Maj Toure because he said some things that are
Mm.
anti-trans or in his mind, anti-grooming. I don't think he cares so much about the trans thing, but if he feels like if you're grooming, he's actually said some things that have indicated that he's willing to do violence if he feels like you are doing things that he considers grooming. And it's like, oh, that's kind of a wild thing to say. Like, not gonna lie, it's a little bit wild. And then people will judge you as a human being if you have them on the show and be like,
Right.
do you agree with him? I don't have to agree with people to have them on my show.
Right.
Do you ever feel like you are put into that box where you are limited on who you could have conversations with because you'll maybe be more ostracized from the community or from people that are in your life who feel a certain way?
Nope. Nope. I tell you one thing, I welcome it. And the reason why is because I think it should be brought to light.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Because here's the thing. Like, if you say 5 true things and 5 false things, people should be able to hear exactly what you're saying, not like the 2 little things that they saw on the internet, but people should be able to see what you have to say in the entirety and decide, is this somebody I want to mess with? Is this somebody
Right.
who I can support them to a point, but I'm not going to support them when they do these things? Like, in life, we're forced to kind of be a part of systems that we don't enjoy. And you also have a choice to kind of ignore certain people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of most of the people in office right now,
Oh,
Democrats and
me either.
Republicans.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Somebody just did a skit talking about how basically everybody in office is like 80 and 90 years old and walking around and getting lost and, and just freezing up, like having like medical incidents and just like completely frozen. and, and just saying wild stuff. And it's like, whoa, this is so true. I hate everything we're doing. I hate it here. I hate it here. And
Fair.
you don't have a choice. Like, you are going to live in America and you're going to run into that. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want to live here, you're going to live somewhere else. And some of the
Mm-hmm.
politicians are going to piss you off too.
Yep.
Outside of that, we do have a choice of like who we interact with and who we support publicly. And sometimes I feel like we overcorrect, right? We're like, well, if I have a choice to, I guess, support these allies or not, like, I'm going to just not, and I'm going to actively work against these people versus be like, I don't like them. I'm just going to leave them alone. Kind of like with the Matt Rife situation, segue, um, people got really mad at Matt Rife because he made
Mm-hmm.
his special, to me, wasn't as funny as it could have been. Like, I've seen other stuff he did that was hilarious. His special was like, had some moments where I'm like, haha, that's funny. Oh, yeah, not the best, but okay, whatever. Right? People got mad.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't even watch him got mad.
Right.
Where do you, if you can address anything that I said before,
Mm-hmm.
feel free. I know I kind of ranted a little bit,
It's
but
all good.
that was weird. People who don't even watch him got mad.
Yeah. Not to, like, generalize everything, but people, you're right. People who don't even know who he is or don't know his comedy got super pissed. And I think a lot of it has to do with like the state of the world that we're in. I will say that I've watched this special. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Here's why. I went to see him in September before that special came out. So I've already seen the show and I know what his jokes were. I thought he was damn hilarious then. Now, I will say this. I do know that he's very offensive. But that's his comedy, and that's the reason I love him. He's going to say what's on his mind, which as do I, and so I freaking love him for that. And that's because I can relate to him on that type of level. Now,
Mm-hmm.
people got mad because he opened with like a domestic violence joke. Now, I will say this as well. I get why they're mad, okay? But at the same time, it's comedy. It's probably not meant to be a joke, but that's who Matt Rife is.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel I can side with both because I'm like, oh, that was freaking funny. But at the same time, there are certain people even who are close to me that are like, hey, that was like a really messed up joke because they've either been in that situation or if they've encountered some type of situation, similar to that. And so you've got to kind of, it's like one of those fine lines where you're like, hey, that was really funny. Like I cope with comedy as well. I try to be funny. I try to make people laugh. I love to laugh. I don't care how offensive my jokes are. If that offends you, don't
Mm-hmm.
listen to it. If it offends you, don't watch it. And whether that makes me have fans or makes me have, mentors or not, if you're going to be an enemy, that's okay. You don't have to watch or listen to my stuff. But
Mm.
don't come at me because you like personally were offended by it. Or if you were, we can work it out and say, like, discuss what the context or something, whatever behind that joke may have been.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I personally have, I guess, maybe tried a little too hard to be funny at times, and I'm just throwing a joke out there, and it's like, ooh, read the room, bud.
Uh huh.
Ooh, and then you look back 10 years later, and you're like, oh my gosh, I really said that. Oh. And people are like, hey, listen, you got to live your life with no regrets. No,
Right.
have some regrets. Like, look back and be like, hey, you know what? I needed to learn from that situation. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily regret learning from it, but I wish I could have learned differently. Like, that's okay. Like, I get so sick of the macho tough guy stuff. Who's like, I have zero regrets in my life. Maybe you're that type of person. I'm just talking to you. But like, no, like you can look back and say, like, you know what? I wish I didn't have to learn the lesson that way.
Right.
But shoot, where were we? I'm getting lost. I can't
Matt
remember what I
Rife,
ate for
trans
breakfast.
rights, LGBTQ space, gun spaces.
Yes. Now, man, but even just going back to what you're saying, um I agree. Matt has a sense of humor. Some of the jokes didn't really land for me. Part of the issue, I think, is some jokes, like, you had to be there, you had to be in the room, you had to feel
Hmm.
the energy, you had to
Yep.
feel the excitement, and it lands differently, and everybody's like roaring, and it's like, yeah, it's funny. Or I think specifically the DV joke, he was like, I'm just testing the room. you know,
Hmm.
you start hard, like start
Yep.
heavy and then kind of reel it back and tell some jokes that are more dynamic. Personally, I would have loved to see a joke that was a little bit more creative, like just a
Hmm.
little bit more creative. But hey, you know what? It's his special. He got a special. He's been doing jokes for
Right.
like 10 years. I think my biggest issue with the commentary was um, it made it sound like, oh, he just started telling jokes yesterday and then he got a special.
No, it doesn't work that way.
He's been doing this for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Man. But how long have you been watching Matt? Was it kind of like in the advent of his social media blow up, or did you know him before he was cool, or what?
No, it was in the social media hype for him. I didn't even know who he was, and my sister was like, "Is that the Wild and Out kid?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't know he was on Wild and Out until
Was
she
he in
said
Wild and
something."
Out,
He
really?
was, yeah,
That's
he really was.
hilarious.
Young Matt Rife was in Wild and Out. But I don't remember how I came across him. Probably TikTok, like everybody else.
Right. Man, gosh, the
Um,
TikTok algorithm's so powerful, bro. Like,
it's crazy.
so here's the funny thing with Matt Rife. People are like, yeah, women only like him because he's like unusually
Gorgeous.
attractive. Like he's got like these baby blue eyes. I don't even know what color his eyes are. And
I don't
his
know.
jaw is super. His skin is so soft, and his lips are like really pink. Or, it's like he looks kind of weird. Like he looks kind of like an alien. Like was he born yesterday? Like
Right.
it's like why is his skin so smooth? Go outside, eat some sun. But for him, like why do you like Matt? Do you think he's gorgeous? Like what's the deal with that?
I think he's gorgeous. I do. That's not why I like him. I like him because he's very fucking offensive.
Mm-hmm. Like he'll just go for your
Mm-hmm.
jugular and
Yeah,
just say like the
as it
most
should
wild,
be.
irreverent thing.
So many people are scared to say what's on their mind. He is not one of
Mm-hmm.
those people. I am not one of those people. Whether he makes enemies, whether he makes friends, fans, whatever it is, and he's just gonna tell it like it is, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I I think I thought it was hilarious the way he went after girls about I don't know if you're into crystals and stuff. I'm not. I think it's kind of silly, but I thought the crystal thing was hilarious. Like, was it Venus is in retrograde or something like that? Like yo,
Yep.
get him. That's hilarious to me.
Because it's true. Like one of my favorites from him is the astrology. Because I
Hmm.
don't personally I don't understand the astrology. Everybody's like, oh, Venus has got to match with Moon or whatever it is. I can seriously reside with that joke because I'm just like say it more, like tell them you don't care because it doesn't make any sense. Like I feel that way. I feel that, and every time like back in the day, right? When I used to
Hmm.
date, and they're like, "Oh yeah, what are you, a Pisces?" I'm like, "Why does it matter?" So I don't know if you saw my Instagram post where it had like get to know me, and it's like, "What's your sign?" And I'm like, "Gay." I what do you mean? What's my sign? I'm like, what the hell
Yo,
are you talking about? Like what do you mean stop sign? I don't know what are you referring to here? Like whatever.
it said 55, trucks 65. Yo, that's hilarious. That is too funny. Man, it's so weird. Like every once in a while, I'll find myself slightly caught up and be like, oh, that's why I like you so much. You're a Gemini too, and I don't think it's really that I feel like our personalities synchronize or we're meant to be friends because I'm a Gemini or whatever. Um, June birthday, and I just think if you're born in June, we got something in common. That's cool.
Right.
I don't think it has anything to do with anything outside of no wonder, because everybody cool was born in June. I don't think it has anything to do with the stars or anything else. And obviously somebody's gonna hear this and be like, well, actually, type away, friend. In fact, type 2 comments so we can boost the algorithm a little bit better. In fact, everyone, if you got to this point, type throw in an astrology emoji. Let me see your signs. Let me
If
see your
you don't mess
signs.
with rose quartz, I don't like you.
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting. The astrology thing is hilarious. I think it's kind of wild, and I think it's a distraction and excuse for most people to
Hmm.
get away with saying stupid stuff, or by not kind of taking responsibility. And that's been a big thing that I guess women have been accused of more recently
Hmm.
is failing to be able to take responsibility for anything or take accountability. And everything's an excuse. I think
Yeah.
astrology is definitely a tool of
A
lack of
scapegoat.
accountability. It's a scapegoat. Oh well, I don't do well with people because I'm say a thing, or I'm gonna go crazy on my birthday month because I'm a Scorpio. I'm like, calm
Because
down,
my
baby.
rock said so.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yo, who was it who said it? Was it a different comedian? Who's that new guy who his all his jokes are about his cousin who has Downs? I forget his name. He's been in my algorithm a lot recently.
I don't
But
know who that is.
he's a big guy. He looks like he might have Down syndrome himself, except he's like 6'7", and so
No
clearly not.
idea.
Clearly
Yeah.
not. He's hilarious, and someone's gonna get me for that. But I got to pull him up, but maybe I'll send it to you like later on. He, what was I gonna say? He is hilarious because I think he was saying, a lot of people, maybe somebody else said this. It's like a lot of people get on guys and say like, "Oh, this guy's neurodivergent, or he probably has autism or something like that," because um, you know he's outside collecting rocks and telling you all about his rock collection. You know, but if a girl does it, she's just quirky and she could
Right.
tell you all about all the rocks and it's like, oh, and this gem is healing. And it's like,
And this one does
no,
this, and this one does that, and this one's
listen, if
supposed
a
to
guy
line up
did
the
this,
moon
he'd
with
be
the
autistic.
sun. Yeah.
You, you Oh no, calm down, buddy. You might want to put the rocks away and have an intelligent conversation. Well, man, my birthday's in 5. One of my commenters said, "My birthday is in 5 days. Got to say, it sucks being caught in between baby Jesus and New Year." Yes, because you're never going to beat baby Jesus, and New Year is the turn up. So,
Yep,
um,
I feel that.
my wife got it good because she's like a little bit after Thanksgiving, and then before Christmas. So like we're focused on her birthday, and then maybe she'll get another gift on Christmas. So it's like, okay, yeah, she's got the good dates. But how you gonna be in between Christmas and New Year? Everybody already balled out for Christmas,
Uh-huh.
and
Yep.
then they're about to spend all their money doing New Year stuff. Sorry,
Yep.
buddy. Life
My sister's
sucks.
December 29th, so I get it.
Godfrey. Oh my gosh, I gotta look that up. Anyways, back to you. Oh my gosh. So, what is something that you wish people knew about you that, or you wish you could talk about more, but it's not really the platform, or you feel like you take too much crap for it? You just like never mind. Like, what? Talk to me about that.
Man, something I wish people knew about me. That I'm going to teach you how to survive. I don't feel like I portray that enough like in social media. And so I will say like the business, like I haven't really been struggling, but it has been like challenging to get like, because I work full time or I'm teaching or I'm taking care or help taking care of my niece and nephew, stuff like that. So I don't have time to post as much as I wish I could. And sometimes I feel like if I post too much, like it goes backwards and like my algorithm goes down,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But I do want to say like I do wish that people, I want them to know I'm here and I want them to know that I'm here to help. And if you need help with like, you feel like some jerk behind the gun counter was like, hey, buy a revolver, I'm here to help.
Oh my gosh. Listen, I've seen some cool revolvers recently, and my opinion's only slightly changed. But at the end of the day, like, I don't recommend that you buy a revolver because striker fires are too complicated. Like, it's just simple enough for your little girl brain. Like, I think
Right.
that's demeaning, that's rude. And I think that's what you're getting at, is that you
Mm-hmm.
can teach these people to become more than who they thought they were.
Right.
Am I right?
You are right. Yeah, I'm here to help. Like I'm not the egotistical instructor that's going to be like, "Hey, you suck at that." I'm not going to be, I definitely don't have all the experience as some people do. I don't have tactical experience, but I do have martial arts experience, and I will give you the mindset on how to survive in any situation. Now, that
Mm,
may not work for everybody, but I will teach you how to survive.
yeah. Well, I think before we're going to tackle one more question here, and then we're going to end the show and send it over exclusively to locals. So if you're watching on locals, the show will continue on for you there. If you guys have questions specifically for Chantel, fire them in. We'll ask her maybe one or two before we transition. But last question, I don't know if are you familiar with Trey Barber?
No.
So Trey Barber, master level competition shooter, skilled beyond repair. Like, this man's got it like that. Um, One thing that he said recently, he's been kicking the hornet's nest, and I love it. I'm here for it. He said something that was pretty true. First he came for the instructors. It was like, hey, you need to basically teach according to skill level, which is, and then he went on to come at everybody who's in the military and law enforcement, saying that, hey, there's even special forces guys who aren't necessarily the best teachers. So
Hmm.
stop pretending that you're a qualified instructor just because you were a combat cook. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Like, you. Somebody once upon a time said that our special teams wasn't special, and then Trey said, "Yeah, a lot of guys in the military weren't special. As in, they weren't special forces. They didn't do a lot of handgun stuff. They weren't the best shooters in the world. Yet they think that they can teach." Now,
Hmm.
something that I have for you is, I know you said you kind of started shooting recently. You have a lot of experience in the world of doing stuff, right?
Hmm.
But you started shooting for yourself around, did you say 21?
21. Yeah.
21. And now you've gotten to a point where you say, like, hey, I feel like I have enough to share that I can teach somebody who's brand new. Trey went on to say that he feels that people who, you need to be teaching like a skill floor up, as in, if
Hmm.
you are intermediate, you can teach the beginners. If you are advanced, you can teach the intermediate. If you're like a professional, or like a grandmaster competition shooter, you can teach the masters. He used a different scale, but I'm just sharing. Do you feel? How do you feel about that? How do you feel that? Because somebody might look at you and say, like, well, you just started shooting. Like, what do you know? How much time have you invested into being able to effectively communicate what's happening, to be able to diagnose what's happening? And somebody, don't take offense to this. It's just a question. This is a conversation.
Yeah.
But I thought he did a great job, but a lot of people were really offended, as they will be. It's the internet, right? Where are you with that?
I halfway agree with him, to be honest with you. And
Sit
here's
halfway.
why. Yeah, halfway. And because I think you should always be a skill level up. So if I'm teaching beginners, I should know how to conceal or whatever the scale is, right? So I can't teach somebody who, like, I just picked up a gun yesterday and I'm here to teach you. There's no freaking way in hell I would like go trust you with my skill level. There's no way.
Yeah, it sounds dangerous for real.
Very, yeah, very. And so, like, I feel though also because I have teaching background. So I've been teaching, I was taught to teach at 9 years old, 10 years old, like in something called the SWAT program in martial arts. So I've been teaching since I was 10 years old. The other thing is like I have a bunch of teaching background. I mean, I have a gun background, like military people or who have been, grandmaster shooters or anything like that. But I know how to teach. However, most people who can shoot can teach, or who can shoot can't teach, and vice versa. So if you can teach but you can't shoot, or you can shoot and you can't teach, like, and I've learned that throughout the years. And so, like, just because like I wasn't the best martial artist, I can definitely teach you how to win. I can give you the tools to do that. I wasn't the best, but I still have world titles under my belt. I
That's
may
true.
not be like, an avid shooter or like a championship grandmaster shooting person, but I can definitely teach you how to do like the
I love
basic
how you
gun
just
safety
said
rules
that.
and how to handle. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I can teach you how to do that. So I halfway agree with him. Like,
Yeah.
there's just like vet your instructors, guys. Like, here's the thing, like, you have the teachers have to tailor it to everybody. Everybody has different learning curves. Everybody's on different levels, and if you're gonna teach a class, you have to know what those skill levels are. You have to know those mindsets, and it doesn't matter, because when you get 25 people in one class and everybody's at different levels and everybody's thinking about it, I like to see the aha moments when they're like, oh, I'm like, see, you learned something there, right? And that's what does it for me. And I'm like, yes, we all learned something, including myself. But I feel like when I teach, and the more I do this, and the more people I encounter, the different points of view, I feel like I get better as an instructor each time. So I'm not only teaching them, they're teaching me as well.
Yeah. So I suppose you said I halfway agree with him. So I don't know if that's just something you say, like a way you were saying it. But for me, the question that came up, I was like, man, are people pissed off at him because they feel like he's gatekeeping? Because the world of gatekeeping is it can be a little annoying. Be like, oh, well, you're not this because you didn't do this, or people have gate kept blackness from me. Well, you're not black because you didn't watch Martin growing up.
Right.
Okay, like, bro, like, does it change a thing? Like, does it change a thing? Am I still black when the police pull me over? Because that's all that matters, right? You know? Like, at the end of the day, they're not gonna be like, so did you watch Martin? Did you listen
Right.
to okay, and Jackson 5, name them all. Like they don't care. So why are we gatekeeping? On the other hand, shooting is extremely dangerous. Like, extremely dangerous. One mistake, and that's your life, and perhaps the life of your children too.
Yeah.
Like, one mistake, and you've altered the trajectory of the world. Like, the butterfly effect is real. The question is, at what point do you maybe disagree, or do you 100% agree? And is he gatekeeping? Question: is he gatekeeping?
I don't think he is. I don't think he is. It may sound like it, but like at the end of the day, like, he's right. Like, and the reason I say that is because, like, for example, my martial arts instructor is now a 5th degree black belt. She can't teach 5th degree black belts because she is one, right? So you always have to be like at least one level above, maybe two. And so I hope that helps, but I don't think he's gatekeeping at all. I think it's fair to say that he's correct.
Yeah. Now, I've always had a question, like, what is a 5th degree black belt versus a 1st degree? Like, I just made black belt. Okay, well, you won the whole game.
Yeah.
You can retire now. No, there's actually degrees to this thing.
Right.
So and so, how high does it go? Is it up to 10? Like, how high can you go?
As far as what I'm aware in the organization that I was involved in, the most recent one, I believe it's the ninth. I haven't heard
Okay.
of 10th in that one, but I believe it's
Okay.
ninth.
So, I mean, you could ninth degree, like, but is there anything after that, or do you become like Ip Man, Jet Li? Like, what was
Pretty
Jet
much.
Li? You know, do you transcend?
Pretty
Are they
much.
gonna give you a show? Like, that's
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I actually had that conversation just last Saturday, actually, because my instructor, who the fifth degree, who I just referred to, she's gonna go test again for sixth, and I'm like, but why? She's like, just cause. I'm like, okay, but I stopped. Like, let's be real. I stopped at second degree. I've been a second degree black belt for 20 years. The reason why is because I have no desire to go any higher than that. I'm like, go to third, but just because I'm bored, or go to third just because I'll be looked at like, world championship benefits, whatever. Because some judges take that into account. Oh, you're only a second degree, but what you don't know is I've been training for a second degree for 20 years. You didn't know that, did you?
Mm-hmm.
So I have the same question, to be honest with you. Like, all the kids that I trained with that are coming up now, they all outrank me. Every single last one of them, the younger kids that I've won my demo team championships with. And I'm just like, you outrank me, and I'm the oldest, which is really funny. But I can teach you because I taught you how to do that. I taught you to your district champion. Like, it's the weirdest thing to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, like, after a certain point, I don't know that it'd be beneficial. It's probably not the best thing to say, but I just don't see the benefits after a certain point.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you know what? A lot of disciplines and um, I guess traditions have traditions that don't make no sense.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like why are we doing this? Like, no, honestly, like why are we doing this? This doesn't
Yeah.
quite like think about it logically. Are we doing this because it's a thing to do, or is it because it's a
Hmm.
money making racket?
Right.
Like that's my biggest thing is I don't like to feel like I'm being people are just making money off of me without me actually
Hmm.
having some sort of major benefit. Because first of all, like if you look around in my podcast studio, we got 300 light here. $200
Hmm.
light there. Both the
Right.
soft boxes are like $150. The podcast deck $600. Laptop $2,000. Monitor,
Expensive.
like I can just go down the list. And this is why I'm begging y'all, like join us on the locals. Pitch in $5, make this thing happen because I would love to keep doing stuff and it's expensive as hell. So it just is. That said, I get kind of weird about like, oh, you want me to come to your class? What are you going to teach me? Are you
That's fair.
like, what are you going to teach me? Like,
Right.
I'm down to learn, but unless I'm getting a lot,
Hmm.
like, why am I paying a lot? Like,
Right.
come on. So, guys, let's go ahead, transition the show over to locals. If you just tell people where they can find you, where they can follow your journey, where they can shoot you DMs and have deeper conversations with you and learn about, things that maybe they didn't learn from this show, where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, it's Women Who Carry HQ, like headquarters. Facebook, we just reactivated our Facebook at Women Who Carry .official, and then womenwhocarry.org is our website.
Excellent. And thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and sign out here on YouTube and podcast. And those who want to listen on further, make sure you're on the locals because we're going to do an additional 15 or so minutes there. And we're going to talk about some things that we just couldn't talk about here. All right, guys.
Okay.
So here we go. And guys, thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you are. If you are watching on locals, keep watching. We're going to keep going. But for those of you who are on the podcast side and for those of you who are on the YouTube or wherever else, the thing that you're currently watching on, thank you so much. You've been awesome. Thank you guys who are with us live. For those of you who support us, your help is invaluable. I see each and every one of you as a partner in this thing, and I thank you for that. God bless you. Merry Christmas. And then, of course, keep it costly.